Hello everyone, welcome to the Reading Buddy Book Club for June. My name is Miss Emily and I'm an Assistant Youth and Teen Librarian here at Fayetteville Public Library. For June, we are reading Malamander by Thomas Taylor. This is episode 6, so if y'all are not caught up, feel free to pause this video, watch the rest of it so that you don't get spoilers. Where we last left off with Herbie and Violet, they were in a bit of a compromising situation. Before we jump back into the story, make sure you have your reading buddy, and make sure between the videos that you are also reading with your reading buddy. If you want to, grab a snack. Keep working on those coloring sheets and crafts. If you have already finished those, feel free to follow along with me as I read. Chapter 30, The Missing Page. The writer looks only slightly disheveled in his expensive suit, his mop of dark hair only a little out of place. Not at all like a man who has just shot 2 harpoons, one at me and one at Violet, and shot them both to kill. His sudden reappearance is so shocking that Violet and I just stand there, transfixed, which is why Eels is able to snatch the paper from her so easily. Well, 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 the missing page, he says, straightening his tie. And just as I'd given up hope of ever finding it. No, cries Violet. That's not yours, it's my dad's. She tries to snatch the paper back, but Eels picks her up. Just like that, he picks her up with one hand and throws her out of the way. Violet lands, stumbling, and falls back into an armchair. In an instant, Erwin flies at Eels, hissing as he claws up his legs and sinks his teeth into the man's hand, making him drop the paper. Little weasel, cries Eels, flinging Erwin away. The cat twists in the air, ready to land on all fours, but he hits the corner of a bookshelf and instead falls limply to the ground. And me? Well, I've grabbed the paper, haven't I? But then there's a clonk to end all clonks, as Eels brings his fist down on my head. My lost and founder's cap is forced over my eyes, and I go down. It's a moment before I can find up again. When I do, I see that Eels is towering over me. I look over at Violet. She's still in the chair, clutching her throat. Erwin is in her arms now, trembling with pain. The Achilles spot, Eels reads aloud to us from the paper, as if he's giving a lecture. Of course, you both know who Achilles was. He glances at each of us in turn. No? Well then, allow me to remind you. The hero Achilles was dipped in the magical river Styx as a baby, and his body was made invulnerable all over. All over, that is, except at the place where his mother held him for the dipping. In the case of Achilles, his heel was his weakness, and it was an arrow in the heel that brought about his death many years later. But let's see what the Malamander's Achilles spot is. Eels stops taunting us and reads the rest of the page, his lips moving quickly and silently with the words. Then he gasps. His gasp becomes a snort of derisive laughter. Is this some kind of joke? The man says, eventually, his brows lowering and his eyes going dark. Is this all I have to do to kill the monster? You're the monster, cries Violet. I hope the Malamander bites off your head. Well, that was a distinct possibility, says Eels, tapping the paper lightly. But now that I know this, well, who'd have thought it? Who'd have thought that such a fearsome, armored fiend as the Malamander, a monster that destroyed a whole battleship and its crew, would have such a soft heart? What do you mean? I say, despite myself. Soft heart? I suppose there's no harm in telling you, says Eels, refolding the sheet of paper and sliding it into his jacket. According to dear Peter, the monster opens its heart when it lays its eggs. Quite literally, the armored plates over its heart fold back so that its beating can be heard in the ocean. That's how it calls its mate. On the coldest, darkest night of the year, the Malamander lays its poor lonesome heart bare to summon its long-lost mate home to the nest. And doesn't it just make you want to puke? How pathetic. But also, how very unsurprising that a softy like Peter Parma would be the one to discover such a ridiculous fact. My dad is a great man, cries Violet. He's greater than you'll ever be. Is, says Eels. I think you mean was. Please don't tell me that you actually think your parents are still alive. But I see from your face that you do. Oh dear. Well, it hardly matters now. But I'll tell you what. Once I have the Malamander egg, and I can make my every wish come true, I promise you, Violet Parma, that I'll wipe you out of existence and end your misery for good. And with a snarl, he swings away to the door, then stops and swings back. Oh, I'll be needing this, he says, and stoops to pick up the dropped harpoon, which I'd still been holding when he came in. Tempered steel with a silver tip, he says, turning the harpoon in the little light from the window and making it flash cold and bright. These things cost a fortune, but I need only one tonight when I destroy the Malamander. I'll try to make it this one. Chapter 31. Peter Parma's Magnum Opus. It's all my fault, Violet puts her head in her hands. We're sitting in Seagull's steamy diner, which is surprisingly busy. The clatter of knives and forks and the murmur of locals drowns out the sounds of Violet's despair, which is probably just as well. If I hadn't been meddling in all this, Eels would never have found that page. Seagull arrives at that moment. But what is this? Tears at lunchtime? This is not good. I've already scattered the contents of my coat pocket across the table. I think about doing the speech again, but Seagull knows the drill by now. It's been a tricky day, I tell him. Could we have something to cheer us up for this? And I slide over a small silver and cut glass cigarette lighter that has been in the Lost and Foundry since before the First World War. No one will be coming for it now. For this you can have the works, declares Seagull, and he pats Violet on the shoulder before heading off to his kitchen island to drop fish in the fryer. You mustn't beat yourself up, Vi, I say, leaning forward so only she can hear. There's still no guarantee that Eels will succeed. According to the stories, people have been trying to take the Malamander's egg since forever, and no one has managed it yet. Even Captain Kraken, who had a small army to fight for him, couldn't keep it for long. The Malamander will kill Sebastian Eels, and it'll be his own stupid fault. Violet's face reappears from inside her hair. And his weakness? I open my mouth to speak, and then close it again. I had been going to say that Eels would have to be a crack shot to hit a precise opening in the Malamander's armor, but then I remember the targets in his house. The bullseyes were riddled with holes. And what about my parents? Violet continues. I came here to find them, but instead, all I've done is ruin everything. Maybe it's time I accept that they are nowhere to be found. Maybe it's time I accept that they were probably killed by the Malamander too. Vi, we both know it's possible, Violet cries. It's certainly more likely than them just strolling into the diner alive and well after all these years. We fall silent. Then we both look over to the door because, well, in Erie-on-Sea you never quite know. But no one comes in. This isn't a story, Violet, I say gently, though I hate saying it. There isn't always a happy ending in real life. Maybe we just have to learn to accept that. Even in a town where a 200-year-old sailor can materialize out of a tap and a cat can talk? Not even then, I reply, relieved to see the fish and chips arrive. Anyway, I say, after a long pause during which many chips are eaten, mostly by me. I'm the real ninny here. To think that I had your dad's manuscript in my Lost and Foundry all that time, in his luggage, and I never realized what I had. You weren't supposed to know, Herbie. Eels must have figured out where it would be, I say, and I'll bet that it was old Mollusk who helped him get it. Perhaps, but it was you that kept it safe till then. I make a face, but I still feel like a complete dunderbrain. That's your job, Herbie, says Vi with passion. And you're brilliant at it. Keeping lost things safe, detecting clues, finding rightful owners. You're amazing, Herbie Lemon, and I'm so glad I met you. I chomp another chip and beam. Well, I suppose I am quite amazing. But now, finally, I know what my job is, Violet goes on, touching the angry scabs on her cheek. I may not know how to find my parents, but I do know how to fix the mess I've made. I have to stop Sebastian Eels from getting the Malamander's egg. I have to face the monster myself. A wave chooses that moment to hit the pier, sending the salt and pepper shakers rattling across the table. It's sometime later and lunch is finished. We're standing outside on the pier, keeping a little warmth from the diner snug inside our big coats as we look over the heaving sea. The pier shudders again, creaking in the wind that billows and buffets around us. We're standing right at the end of it, on the shriveled wooden planks beyond the old theater. The theater opens only for a month or two in the summer, and looking up at it now, I'm surprised it even does that. It looks like one well-aimed super wave would sweep it into the sea forever. So, you're sure about this? I say to Violet, pointing toward the rising sea. You're sure about that? Ahead, the dark green-smeared iron hull of the battleship Leviathan is about to vanish beneath the surging waves. Only the two great chimneys, corroded almost to collapse, and one gun turret are still visible as the tides climb to claim them again. The Malamander hibernates, Violet tells me. I saw that in my dad's manuscript, although it was probably my mom who figured it out. It sleeps for part of the year, somewhere far out in the ocean, the whole summer long, but then, when winter hits, it comes near the town to hunt and to lay its egg on midwinter night. In the wreck? I say, and Violet nods. My dad must have come out here to watch it, my mom too, when the tide was low enough. As it will be later tonight, I say. And then, when its mate doesn't come, the poor thing devours its own egg and swims away alone to wait another year. Poor thing. Violet shrugs. The Malamander has lost its mate. I've lost my parents. It's funny to have something in common with a monster, but I do. Then, after a pause, Violet adds, and I wonder if you do too, Herbie. Me? Well, I can't help noticing, says Violet, turning to me, that you don't seem to have parents either. I pick a large flake of rust off the pier railing and pretend to find it interesting. I'm a castaway with no memory, washed up on a strange shore in a crate of lemons and adopted by a whole town. But Violet is wrong. She was lost, yes, but I was found. It isn't the same thing at all. Herbie? I'll tell you my story one day, Vi, I say, flicking the rust flake into the sea. I promise, but first, we have work to do. We? Of course we. You don't think I'm going to let you finish the adventure without me, do you? But Herbie, it's extremely dangerous. All the more reason for me to come with you, I say, setting my cap straight and standing tall. You handed yourself in at my lost and foundry, Violet Parma, and I'm not letting you get lost again. I took on your case, and I'm going to see it through. The wind ruins the moment by pushing my cap back down over my face, but Violet doesn't seem to notice. She throws her arms around me in a huge hug. Then she looks a bit embarrassed and tries to hide it by punching me on the arm. So I try to pretend it doesn't hurt, until the soppy moment has passed. We need to get back to the Lost and Foundry and get ready, I say, when it has. There's loads of stuff there we can use. Thanks, Herbie. Don't thank me yet, I say. Thank me when we're toasting crumpets tomorrow morning, laughing at stupid old Sebastian Eels and how we stopped him in his tracks. And so we set off back along the pier, towards the lights of the Grand Nautilus Hotel. Chapter 32, Dodgy Business. When we get back to the hotel, Violet heads for the side passage so I can let her in through the cellar window. I call her back. Not this time, I say. I think you should come through the front door like everyone else. Won't they see me in reception? Asks Violet. Seriously? I look at her. After everything we've been through, you're worried about that? But won't I get you in trouble? I look at her some more. You've been getting me in trouble ever since you got here, remember? So we walk up the steps and through the great double doors of the Grand Nautilus Hotel, side by side. It's as we're lifting the counter in my cubbyhole that Mr. Mollusk sees us. Herbert Lemon! He strides over, bristling his small mustache. It is not permitted to take guests down there. Please attend to the young lady in the correct manner and... Then he stops, probably because now he has a good view of Violet. I try to imagine what he sees. A wild-haired girl with a scratched face, in a too-big borrowed coat and a ratty pullover. A girl with a harpoon hole through her clothes, and her mother's boots clogged with sand and seaweed. I see the veins start to throb in his temple, right on cue. What is the meaning of this? The hotel manager hisses, lowering his voice in case any of his precious guests are nearby. Violet's a friend, I say. There's nothing in the rules to say I can't have a friend over. Mr. Mollusk grinds his teeth as he jabs his finger at me. I don't understand what you're doing here, boy. Didn't her ladyship fire you this morning? Fire me? I chortle. Lady Kraken didn't fire me. In fact, she asked me to do her a special favor. She asked me to keep my eye open for any dodgy business going on in her hotel. But Mollusk is quivering with rage now. You are the dodgy business in this hotel, Lemon. You! I think she has something else in mind, I say, straightening my cap and fixing the man with my best stare. Like, for instance, someone's stealing things from my lost and foundry. Stealing? Mr. Mollusk says, the first hint of doubt creeping into his voice. Yeah, stealing. I dial the stare up a notch or two. I mean, going down into my basement when I'm not there, taking suitcases that don't belong to you, and then signing them out as if collected by family. That sort of stealing. Mr. Mollusk passes his hand through his wispy hair. There is suddenly a bead of sweat in his horrible mustache. Oh, I see. He forces a smile. Why would anyone do such a thing? For money, I expect, says Violet. The worst reason of all. Mr. Mollusk looks from one of us to the other, his mouth opening and closing like a fish's. I should think that if Lady Kraken were to sack someone, I say, quite loudly now, so that everyone in the reception lobby can hear, it would be someone who'd done a really bad thing like that, wouldn't you agree? Very well, very well. Mr. Mollusk waves his hand to shush me. Very well, Lemon, carry on as you were. No need to make a fuss. It's Mr. Lemon, actually, I say, and he gives me a look of desperate fury. Mr. Lemon, quite so. And with that, the hotel manager walks away, slightly wobbly, and locks himself in the lavatory. In my cellar, we stoke up the fire and settle down to wait for night. But no time at all later, Violet looks out the window and announces that the night is already here. Chapter 33, Willow the Sea Wisp. Maybe we should tell someone what we're planning to do, I say. Maybe, Violet replies. But who would we tell? Who can we trust? Jenny Hanover, I say. I trust Jenny, and I think Dr. Thalassie's all right, really. Violet looks at me. And what if they try to stop us? If they do, eels could get the egg. What then? I don't have an answer for that. Violet climbs back into her coat, warm now, and then pulls on her mother's boots. I go through some of the baskets of loose, lost stuff and pull out 2 hefty flashlights. Batteries are a bit harder to find, but I get both flashlights working. As soon as we think they are hot enough, we take a couple of pebbles each from the top of the wood burner, one for each pocket. We scarf down the remainder of my leftover sandwiches. We'll both leave this way, I say then, opening the cellar window into the night. It will be better if everyone in the hotel thinks we're still down here. And with that, we climb out. It's as cold as ever in the old seaside town. A wind like the breath of ice dragons hits us as we cross the snowy cobblestones to the seawall. The pier is nothing but a series of small swaying lights leading to the snug inviting glow of Seagull's Diner, above which, in light bulb letters, the words Erie on Sea fizz and flicker in the frigid air. But we aren't going to the pier. When we look down over the beach, we can see next to nothing. Tide's already out, says Violet, leading the way down the worn stone steps to the sand. The surface of the beach has a crust of ice. It takes a lot to freeze seawater, but believe me, here in Erie, we have what it takes, and then some. We crunch our way out to the sea along the iron legs of the pier, the small lights of the town twinkling as they fall behind. Once we draw level with Seagull's Diner, a last outpost of friendly warmth on the pier above, we are faced with the great void of nothingness beyond. Should we use our flashlights? Violet shouts above the wind. They'd be useful, but also a giveaway. Eels would see us coming a mile off. It's tempting, I call back. I can't even see 10 paces ahead, let alone all the way to the wreck. But I think we should let our eyes adapt, if they can. So we head into the dark, sticking close together, hearing the wind whistling in the pier struts to our left, until even that is gone. Can you see anything? I shout into Violet's ear. The wind has become a roar. I feel her shake her head. Except, she says, what's that? What? I reply. That light, over there, a purple light. I squint over to where I think Violet is pointing. A purple light. And then I see it, a small point of light that bobs along like a will-o'-the-wisp, further up the beach, reflecting faintly on the wet sand. And yes, purple. Okay, that's weird, I say. I don't know what that is. Whatever it is, it's getting closer. Should we run? Yes, I shout, and we do, heading straight out toward the sea as fast as we can on the crusty sand. The purple light bobs a moment longer, then flashes, as if it has seen us and wants a closer look. Hello, comes a sound, hardly reaching us over the wind. Hello! I grab Violet's arm and pull her to a stumbling halt. Hello, I cry back, cupping my hands around my mouth. What is it? Says Violet, gasping. Not what, I say with a grin. Who? Look! And a figure steps forward into near visibility just ahead of us. The purple light flashes up and picks out the features of a face we both know, muffled by several scarves and topped off with at least 3 hats tied on with string. Mrs. Fossil, I cry. Are we glad to see you? We thought we were about to be abducted by sea fairies or something. Herbie, what are you doing here? Puffs Mrs. Fossil as she reaches us. Don't you know it's the longest and darkest night of the year? We could ask you the same question, says Violet. How's your arm? Oh, it's not bad, says Mrs. F. A bit stiff, but I can still hold a bucket. It's certainly not bad enough to stop me from amber hunting. Amber hunting, Violet and I say together. Maybe you don't know, says the beachcomber, waving her purple light around. Amber glows under ultraviolet light. It's hard to spot in the daytime, but at night it shines out a treat when I flash my UV light on it. Look. She pulls a handful of something out of her coat pocket and shines the purple light down onto it. We huddle around. There, in her palm, are several small stones, glowing faintly green in the ultraviolet. It's the best time of the year for finding it, she says, clutching her hat against the wind. Ancient tree sap, as I'm sure you know. I once found a piece with a millipede in it as big as your... Mrs. Fossil, I say, jumping in before the story starts. We'd love to see that. Maybe we can come by tomorrow. But right now, we're wondering if you have seen anyone out here. On the beach. Someone heading for the wreck of the Leviathan, perhaps? Or the wreck, says Mrs. F. Surely no one would be that stupid. The tide may be low now, but it'll rise again like a flood. Anyone foolish enough to be in that old wreck would be drowned in a jiffy. Thanks, I say, and manage to catch Violet's eye, despite the dark, and realize that our eyes are adapting after all. Aren't you scared, Mrs. Fossil? Says Violet. To be out here in the dark, I mean, after what happened to you. I can just make out Mrs. F's topmost hat shaking from side to side. The way I see it, I was unlucky to get bitten last time. As long as I steer clear of rock pools, I reckon I'll be fine. And I can't resist these little beauties. She waves her palmful of gems at us again. Even so, says Violet, maybe you should call it a night. You've got some great amber there. Wouldn't you like to go back to your wonderful shop and put the kettle on? That sounds like a splendid idea. Mrs. F's teeth flash purple-white in the UV light. Would you two like to join me? I have scones. We'd love to, but there's something we have to do first, I say, steering Violet away. Good night, Mrs. F. Wait, I'm not sure I should leave you here, Mrs. Fossil calls hesitantly from behind us. Why are you out on the beach, Herbie, in the dark? It's just lost luggage business, I call back. Herbie Lemon and Violet Parma are on the case, if you see what I mean. Ha-ha. And we disappear into the night. Wait, calls the fading voice of Mrs. Fossil. Wait, what did you say? Parma? Did you say Violet Parma? But we didn't wait to talk anymore, and soon the wind has swallowed up Mrs. Fossil's words. 34. Warship. It's only when we splash into water that we stop. Herbie, we really need to use those flashlights, says Vi, leaning in close again to make herself heard. What if we walk right out to sea? But I hold up a nearly invisible hand. Wait a sec, I say. Look up at the clouds. A patch of lightness in the northern sky, which I'd had my eye on for a while now, finally opens, ripped apart by the wind. The moon shines down in a rush of silver. The wreck is shockingly close. Its jagged outline towers just a few dozen paces ahead of us. Water swirls around it, crashing in waves against its far side before surging around each end and sweeping over the beach toward us, covering the sand and our feet in icy cold sea. I thought the tide was going out, Violet shouts in my ear. It is, I shout back. I checked at reception. It'll be out completely at 10:13 p.m. And I pull back my sleeve to waggle the glowing dial of my watch, borrowed from lost property, of course, at Violet. That's in 27 minutes. So we just stand here till then, Violet says, through chattering teeth. I shrug. I haven't actually thought this far ahead in detail. Deciding to stop eels from getting the egg is one thing. Actually doing it, well, that's something else, isn't it? And we're already frozen through. What's that? Violet points back up the beach. The town is just a mass of misty lights twinkling in the distance. But down at shore level is another light, a small speck, sharper than the others, that is swinging from side to side and getting closer. Maybe it's Mrs. Fossil, I say, coming back to insist on that scone. I'm starting to wish we'd gone with her after all. I don't think so, says Violet. Herbie, what if it's eels? If it is, he'll see us, I say, now that the moon's out. Then let's go, Violet whispers. Let's get to the wreck before he does. Ooh. HMS Leviathan must have been a monster in its day, almost as long as the pier and twice as wide. It was probably an awesome sight as it crested the waves. Now, though, it's the waves that crest it. Most of the ship's hull is submerged in the silt and sands of the bay. The deck is partly exposed, however, from the middle section forward, sweeping up at a drunken angle, bristling with gun turrets, twisting metal railings, and barnacle-encrusted structures, all of it dripping with seaweed and slime. The prow, the pointy end, that is, rises up to be almost the highest part of the wreck, and it is still wrapped around the spur of rock that tore open the hull and sank the mighty warship. The wind gusts over it all with a high metallic wail. "There must be a way through there," says Vi, pointing to the split metal of the prow. "There is," I tell her. "You've been inside?" Violet looks surprised. "Why didn't you say so?" "I haven't been inside," I say. "I've just been out to look at it a few times. Have you any idea how dangerous this wreck is?" "My dad's been inside," says Violet, "and eels, and goodness knows how many others. And we'll have to, too, if we're going to do what we came to do." "Yeah, I know," I say quickly, "but the tide, Vi, when it comes back in..." "We'll just have to be careful," Violet replies firmly, and I can tell that nothing is going to stop her. "Eels will be here in a minute. Come on." "Wait," I say. "If we go in now, eels will be between us and the way out." "Well, what then?" "Let's see if we can get up on the deck," I say. "I want to watch what Eels does, and if he goes in, we'll have the advantage when we follow." So we run, splashing in the swirling shallows, till we reach the monstrous black hull. I put my hand on it and feel the faint warmth of my body sucked out into its freezing metal skin. "We can get up here," says Violet, and I see her silhouetted figure rise ahead of me. I wonder for a moment how she's doing this, till I spot in the moonlight a series of holes corroded through the hull, acting like a ladder. But the moonlight worries me. Can we be seen already? I look around, and the light on the beach is surprisingly close now. I can even see the shape of a man behind it. It's Eels, there's no mistake, and lumbering behind him is the hulking form of someone else I recognize, Boathook Man. I glance at Violet, and she's waving at me to hurry. She's already on the deck of the Leviathan. I climb till I can haul myself over onto the deck beside her, where I land with a loud metallic clang. The approaching light, which has been heading for the prow of the ship, immediately swings around toward us. We drop low behind the ship's side, but it's riddled with holes, and particles of flashlight beams play over us both. Violet jabs her finger toward the prow, and I follow her, still crouched. After a moment, we risk another peek. Sebastian Eels is now walking straight toward the place where we climbed, his flashlight fixed on that point. "Oh, bladderwracks," I say, but Violet is pointing again. Behind us, on the deck, looms one of Leviathan's gun turrets, its two long barrels festooned with dripping seaweed. We manage to duck behind it just as Sebastian Eels swings himself up onto the deck. The man is an extraordinary sight. He has a full wetsuit on, complete with an air tank. A diving mask is around his neck, and a mouthpiece dangles from his side, ready for use. Over his suit, he wears a long-sleeved shirt of glittering steel chainmail, the kind people wear to swim with sharks. He has a packed equipment belt, a long dagger in a sheath strapped to one thigh, and lights mounted on his helmet. In his hands, he holds the harpoon gun, sweeping it from side to side, ready to release its deadly darts at anything he wishes. We shrink back into the shadow of the gun turret. There's a porthole door at the back of it, fixed open a sliver on rust-blistered hinges, but do we really dare go in there? I shake my head at Violet when she points at the door. I feel my insides go watery at the thought of what could be lurking inside the turret. But as we creep around the other side, away from Eels, a dark shadow grows behind us, blotting out the silver moonlight. We spin around to see a terrible sight. Boathook Man is hauling himself over the far side of the ship. We're surrounded. Violet pulls me back toward the door of the turret. I try to shake her off, to protest, but she pulls even harder. Boathook Man could swing his head over our way any moment, and we'll be seen, and Eels is heading around the other way. I let myself be pulled to the twisted metal doorway and watch with mounting horror as Violet squeezes herself through, into the dark, and I have no choice. As the sound of ringing footsteps grows closer and closer on the iron deck, I edge toward the doorway and allow Violet to pull me into the black, dripping, windowless unknown. Chapter 35, The Malamander's Lair. The stink of the sea is overwhelming. I shrink back into the darkness, still pulled by Violet, desperately hoping it is Violet pulling me, and not some flubbery, faceless horror from the deep. "Quiet," I hear her say close to my ear. It's possible that I'm making some small whimpering sounds right now. I can't, despite my best efforts, stop thinking that very soon the sea will surge back over the deck of the ship and fill this small dark space with water. What if we're still here when that happens? What if the door slams shut? What if this is our tomb? "Herbie, seriously, be quiet." I clench my teeth firmly together. It's hard to distinguish any sound from outside now, beyond the whistle of the wind. But is that a footstep? Then there's a clang of metal banging against metal, and suddenly, before we can do anything, there's a blinding flash. Ahead, it must be Eels, looks into the doorway, and his headlamps fill the inside of the turret with brilliant light. In a moment of vivid awfulness, I see the slimy metal interior of the turret crawling with sea creatures, and then the light is gone, leaving me blinded, with the memory of those sea creatures swarming in my mind. Amazingly, Eels doesn't seem to have spotted us. We're flat against one side of the turret, partially shielded by a curtain of seaweed, and he only glances inside anyway, perhaps thinking no one in their right mind would crawl into such a small and dismal hole. "It's not here," we hear him call over the wind, somewhere outside on the deck. "We mustn't waste time." Another sound cuts through his voice, a high roaring shriek, like sheet metal being rent in two. But it's not really that. In the fetid dark, Violet and I look at each other as we recognize the cry of the Malamander. "Come on," cries Eels, and we hear his boots thudding away across the deck. Soon, we hear nothing but the gusting of the wind outside. "I need to get out of here," I whisper, but Violet grabs my arm again. "Wait, didn't you notice it?" she says, "when he shone his light inside?" "It?" I say, remembering the crawly, spiny, scaly creatures that call this watery hell their home. "We need to get out of here, Violet, now." But Violet turns on her flashlight, and the inside of the turret is lit again. The creatures writhe, creeping over my shoes, and I kick them off frantically. But with a longer, more stable light, I also get a sense of the interior of the turret as a space where men once worked, manning the gun. It calms me a bit to think of that, and I manage to brush a lobster off my leg with only a small whimper. And then I notice that Violet is shining her flashlight on something specific. It's an opening in the floor of the turret, a round opening, with metal foot and handholds descending down into the belly of the ship. "It's another way in," she says, picking a shrimp out of her hair and releasing it into a pool. "We could use it to get ahead of Eels." "And then what?" I say. "Violet, we don't have a plan for this part." Something tells me my mom and dad didn't have much of a plan either, but we have to stop Eels from getting the egg, or their sacrifice will have been for nothing. I groan. She always has an answer I can't argue against. An image of Mrs. Fossil's cozy shop interior comes into my mind, complete with buttered scones and sweet tea, but I shake it away. "Come on then," I say with a sigh. "Thank you for coming with me, Herbie." "Yeah, whatever," I say. "Just lead the way before we're eaten alive by starfish or something." Violet loops the strap of her flashlight over one of her coat buttons. With both her hands free, she begins to descend. I take out my own flashlight and do the same. Then I follow her down. The iron rungs are freezing to the touch, and my sense of claustrophobia grows sharper still as we climb down the metal tube. There's a place where the iron is corroded to nothing, and I have to reach down beyond it with my foot to find the next secure rung. Inside the hole made by the corruption, an octopus, vivid red-orange, slaps one tentacle against the wall and fixes me with a watery black eye. "Please tell me we're nearly there," I gasp. I gasp down the tube at Violet. "Just a bit further," she says. And then my foot is dangling. I've reached the bottom rung, and I splash down into the corridor. We're deep in the ship now, at the waterline. Our feet are submerged in the bone-freezing sea, and I curse the fact that no one in the Grand Nautilus Hotel has ever lost a pair of waterproof Wellington boots, size 6, with a nice fuzzy lining. I untie my flashlight and shine it at my watch. 17 minutes to low tide, I murmur to Vi, amazed that it's been only 10 minutes since I last looked at my watch. At that point, there will be a bit of time when the water does nothing. They call it slack water. And then it'll be rushing back in here. We have to be gone by then. And that's when we hear it again, the cry of the Malamander, a piercing, shrieking, prehistoric sound that echoes through the dripping iron carcass of the battleship. "That sounds close," I gasp, clutching Violet's arm. "That's because this is its home," Violet whispers. "Eels might feel comfortable while the tide is out with his harpoons and chainmail, but once this place fills with water again, I don't think he'll stand much chance against the monstrous fish-man. Neither will we, I want to say, but I don't. What I say instead is, we should go that way where the water gets deeper," and I point. Somehow I just know that's where all the action will be. We edge forward, our feet laboring through the deepening water. I reach into my pockets, hoping to feel the last of the warmth of the hot pebbles, but they are as cold now as the metal around us. I dump them into the water and keep wading on. In the light of our flashlights, I can see we're approaching a T-junction. I'm about to make a comment on not losing our way when there's a gentle, flippery sound somewhere behind us and a soft, throaty clicking. I freeze and feel Violet do the same. Slowly we turn and bring our flashlights up. There is something standing at the higher, drier end of the corridor. As our light hits it, we catch the gleam of scales, and I think at first it is Sebastian Eels in his chainmail, and then it blinks with two enormous spotlight eyes, and I know with dead certainty that it's not Eels. It drops into a low, menacing crouch, and double rows of webbed spines rise up along its back. Two long-fingered claws flex graspingly at us, and a mouth gapes open, edged with teeth like needles. It's the Malamander, and it takes a step forward. I'm about to shout a very bad word indeed and explode in a million terrified pieces when Violet does something amazing. She speaks. "It's okay," she calls out, trying to hide the shock and fear in her voice with a soothing tone. "We are not here to hurt you. We're friends, okay? Just friends. We mean you no harm." She's holding out her trembling hand, showing one empty and the other holding the flashlight beam down. The Malamander stops and tips its head to one side, as if listening. It blinks again. "It's okay," Violet continues, her voice growing calmer still as she gains confidence. "Everything is okay. We're here to help you." And I think, Bladderwracks, Vi is talking to it, to the Malamander. This might actually work. The creature lowers its claws and makes a low, purring burble. And then, just as I'm beginning to dare to breathe, there's a long metallic clang from somewhere else in the ship. The Malamander jolts its head up. It opens its cavernous, tooth-needle mouth and roars an ear-splitting, soul-tearing, nightmarish cry of saurian fury. Then it charges at us. And that's where we're going to stop for today. This is the second to last episode, so In a couple of days, I will be releasing the finale, so you'll finally get to find out what happens with the Malamander. I have so enjoyed reading this book with y'all, and I really hope that you guys have enjoyed it as well. I hope you are having a fantastic summer. I hope you guys are getting to come to the library. We have a ton of different programs happening. Make sure that you are continuing to read with your reading buddy, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!